And Newport is where my great uncle, somebody, spent a year in jail.
Cattle rustling.
Yeah. Oh, what did he do?
The sheriff of Marion County surrounded him. He was driving stolen cattle to Indianapolis, to the stockyard. And the sheriff and the posse surrounded him, and he was never discovered. So
he disappeared.
Yes, and of course people think that he is somehow somebody killed him, but we don't know. And my great uncle was never seen.
What we conclude from that, but maybe in our families we should stay away from cattle.
Well, it comes of a long history, and I was.
You come from a long history.
Oh, I was fascinated to learn Susan is an Armstrong. And the most famous of the cattle rustlers in the world was a man named John Armstrong.
Oh, really?
And he lived on the border between Scotland and England. And he was called a reaver.
He was called
now,
what?
A reaver. There's a connection here to American politics. The reavers along the Scottish and English border lived for quite a long time, and they became very powerful. And John Armstrong was the most powerful of the reavers. There were others, some I connected to my family, the Douglases. He was a powerful reaver, but none was more powerful than Armstrong. And they became so powerful, John Armstrong at any time could put 1,300 armed men in the saddle, and the king was afraid of him even.
What year would that be?
This has been back about in the, 1300s, back in there. Maybe a little later. No, a little later than that. But because of the power of the reavers, who would steal cattle on both sides of the border like Geronimo did in Mexico and Arizona and then sell them back and forth, they did the same thing. But the reavers, the Scottish people, when they drive the cattle, they would, we say, when we drive horses in America, we say, giddy up. But when the Scotsman drove a horse, he said, Whigamore. Whigamore means Whigamare. Whiga is a word like giddy, it's just a sound. And more is Scottish for mare, and Whigamore means giddy up. So they were called the English called them Whigamores, because they thought that was funny. So when the English Puritans and the Scottish Presbyterians joined political forces to take over Parliament, because they were of the same Calvinistic point of view, the English called both parties, the Puritans and the Presbyterians, Whigamores, because people hated Scottish people so much that they thought they attached the Puritans, the English Puritans, to the Scots. That's the way you do in politics. And then you attach people to people that they may have talked to on the street corner or something that you don't like, that nobody likes, and then you guilt by association. So they called them Whigamores, and it was shortened to Whigs, and the Whigs became the conservative political party
is that right?
in England.
That's where the Whigs come from.
And then the Whigs also were the conservative political party in America. Davy Crockett was a Whig when he was in Congress.
Not because of their costume.
No, it was just the opposite. The people that wore the Whigs were the opposite of the Whigamores. The Whigamores were looked down upon. Those were the English aristocracy.
The Tories.
The Tories, we call them later, right? But the in America, Abraham Lincoln was a Whig, and most of the Republican Party was formed out of Whigs.
Out of the Whigs.
Out of some other groups like the Know Nothings and a few other parties, but the Whigs were represented the conservative point of view that is still held in America by sincere people.
Even then, it was a conservative party. Always had been
The Whigs.
more conservative.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Of course, those things have changed in very recent years. I say the last 10 years, things have really meshed together to where the parties aren't different at all. They just talk different and have different written platforms. But that, how did we get on that? You were talking about cattle rustling. Yeah. So there's a long tradition of cattle rustling in America among certain people.
Yeah.
Your family and mine,
Yeah.
apparently. What?
It's an honorable calling.
honorable call.
Yeah.
Hey, at least they weren't horse thieves.
Well, they tried that over here. It didn't work as well. But I will say that my uncle did steal them on the east side or the west side of the Wabash in Illinois and drove them over into Indiana. So I guess the tradition of the Reavers is still there, thinking one jurisdiction will protect him from another. Well,
So I guess that could have been a pretty lucrative profession.
it was, and the stockyards over there at Indianapolis were, they always paid good money until very recently, more so than the local yards. We sold there for years in Indianapolis.